So I'm here today with Ravi Chaudhry, who's going to talk to us about capitalism versus peopleism. It's a new book. You should get a copy of it. So, peopleism, what it's a word you invented, tell us a little bit more about why you think there is a need, a desperate need for that transition at this time.
Well, I think the answer lies basically in if we look at what capitalism has done over the last quarter century. Uh, as I have often said, first time they did something, we ignored it. Second time, we thought these were exceptions. Third time, we got worried and thought it'll take care of itself and good sense will prevail. But 25 years later, we now find that capitalism has been made unreformable by a handful of capitalists globally. And what is the impact? Not a single global problem has been resolved in the last 25 years, and new ones keep coming up again and again. Today, the interests of the bottom 80% of the population in almost every country gets only notional attention from leaders in politics and business. They tend to be singularly focused on helping each other in business and politics garner more wealth and unquestionable power. How can you explain that richest 1% have more wealth than the bottom 95% of the global population? That's not equality, it's global economic apartheid, a systemic suppression of human development. And we treat nature as an expendable resource and keep plundering it for short term greed. So, capitalism has to change. The change is unstoppable. What I have described in my book is that this is going to happen anyway. And I've explained why I think so. But I have put this book across in the interest of those who are in power today. If they carry on doing what they do, they will not stay in power much longer. But if they start reforming themselves and start aligning with the bottom 80% of the population and start listening to them, start seeing them, then a change in attitude will make them not only wealthy but also happy. And this will create a new era of governance which the world deserves. And I see it happening very, very fast because we are moving to a new era of the survival of the wisest. I believe wisdom leaders alone will be able to win the trust of the people by using the same social media, which is today in the control of the rulers and business leaders. It's become a commodity. And I foresee the new generation of youth now making it in favor of the power of those who have been denied this power so far. So that's how I brought the concept of peopleism.
Okay, that's a very optimistic start. I'm going to do a bit of a contrast because we'll come to wisdom later on. Let us reflect a little longer before we leap upon wisdom. But a contrast between populism and peopleism, which sound the same thing. In my country, we have a party that is purporting to serve the many and not the few, which calls itself Reform. However, it is exactly the same old wine in new bottles. They are presenting themselves as people of the people, when in fact they are the same billionaires, millionaires that are, currently doing that. So, how would you contrast uh, populism, which we have a sort of an epidemic of at the moment, with this peopleism that you're talking about? How do we begin on that journey?
That's a great question you have raised, Peter. Thank you very much. Uh, Now, I'll start by making a fundamental comment. that every entrepreneur requires three things to set up an organization, an institution, a company. These are the capital, people, and nature. So far, and more so in the last 25 years, capital predominates all the way. People are considered as a commodity, and nature is treated as an expendable resource. And this is what has made them more worried than ever before. Those in power are today are the most worried people in the world. They know they cannot retain this power for long. I've spoken to many of them, and they have confided in me. Yes, but I can't sleep at night now, and this is happening more and more. So now, populism means that they think they can continue in this position, and they want to do a few cosmetic changes, which they are still continuing to do, and create an impression that they have changed. Peopleism does not depend on creating an impression on others. It is a consequence of the change of reality of how one leads. What are the priorities of one's leadership? And the pursuit of profit must give way to dominance of people issues and respect for nature. And when these things come about, I see that it's a few handful of unworthy capitalists who have done it. Now, let me clarify here. Capitalists are a nation's asset. And a vast majority of them are responsible entrepreneurs. They create jobs, they keep the wheels of economy moving, and they work honestly. They don't have their income stored in tax havens where they don't pay taxes. So I think it's the unworthy capitalists who, if they become worthy capitalists, can stay as owners of philanthropy. It's about only a cosmetic exercise. People change, not a band-aid, but a systemic transformation of how we govern. And this primarily will be driven by looking at discovering one's wisdom within oneself.
Thank you.
You don't have to, wisdom can't be taught. It has to be discovered within. Knowledge is sourced from outside, and you don't consider whether it's worth using it or not.
Before we get on to wisdom, which is on my list of things to ask you about, you've just stepped upon another thing which I want to ask you about. They do say in management and business and leadership circles that what gets measured gets done. And I talked with an Albanian academic that's sort of an American that lives in Albania, and he sort of is banging the drum for a change of how we measure capitalism. So he talks about GDP, but I wonder if we should be changing the metrics of how people regard themselves as being successful from GDP, perhaps to GPP, gross people product. I mean, what are your thoughts on how we measure everything? Because that does affect what gets done.
I very much love this question, Peter. Now, there are two aspects to it. I agree that what gets measured gets done. The problem is not with that. The problem is that we measure wrong things. And obviously, we are going up. We think we are going up. We are rapidly going to an abyss of destruction. Now, I have said for the last 2 decades, and I wrote it in my last book, on which also you were kind enough to interview me, that the real growth must be determined by the GDP growth of the bottom 80% of the population in the world. If that measure is growing at a good pace, then that country will grow. And the 20% top people in that country will be able to live without fear, with peace, without any issues where they need to be afraid of.
Do you know, I think that the top 20% or the top 1% even often believe, or they tell us that there's a trickle down factor. If they really believed there was a trickle down factor, then the bottom up approach which you describe, they will be fine if 80% of the people are doing okay. They don't need to worry at all. So perhaps that is what GPP means, although that's my terminology, not yours. But
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. No, I am saying way at the bottom, 80% per capita income growth.
Hmm.
And if the World Bank starts rating nations on that basis,
Yeah.
that is real progress. The purpose of civilizational growth is determined by, or rather, it's a story of the unfolding of human progress. Now, progress is a trajectory. It doesn't always go up, it goes down when it results in the deterioration of the lives of a large majority of people. I'm afraid in the last 25 years, we are going through a continuous decline in the standard of life of the 80% of the global population.
Now let's come on to knowledge and wisdom. I live in a world, or I think we all live in a world where we're being rained on by data every day. I found a statistic from a neuroscientist that said that in the 1800s, we absorbed 34 gigabytes of information on a daily basis. Apparently, that's the amount on a yearly basis, but that's the amount we absorb on a daily basis now. So, and some people say to me, I can't cope with all this information. I look for easy answers to complex problems. But how do we manage being a tsunami of data to seek out wisdom? How do we get that shift from knowledge to wisdom?
Well, I have devoted 3 chapters in my book to answer this question which you have raised, because it is a pivotal question.
Hmm.
Uh, why will capitalists change? Basically, this is what you are asking. They are making money. They control how the governments are run. They can mask truth. They can take decisions on behalf of judiciary. They don't let regulators function. Why should they change? Now, my hypothesis is that this change is unstoppable. Looking at the history of civilization, we have been through 5 stages of economic progression. The hunter-gatherers economy, which started with Homo erectus about 2 million years ago, agricultural economy 12,000 years ago, industrial economy since the 13th century, information economy 50 years ago, and knowledge economy 25 years ago. Now, this is an important comment. Each transition was a watershed moment in the history, a discontinuity in time and space when things that mattered till now will not be important hereafter. It's a moment when history will cease to determine our future and we embark on a new trajectory. We are now moving from knowledge economy to wisdom economy. And wisdom will replace knowledge as the key attribute of leaders. Wisdom, well, the knowledge is like water in the sand. It disappears and no trace is left. But if it is accompanied by wisdom, then it stays. It keeps the person growing and improving, not only himself, but it helps bring the best of each one whose life he or she touches. Now, there are 3 differences between knowledge and wisdom. There are many, but for our short discussion, I'll name 3. Knowledge has no space or provision for ethics. Wisdom is anchored on non-negotiable ethics. Knowledge by itself doesn't seek wisdom. Wisdom continuously seeks knowledge which is relevant. Now, knowledge gives you intelligence, the ability to analyze on chosen facts. Truth is not a focus. So you choose the facts you gather and you say, okay, I have the knowledge and this is my decision. Wisdom gives you access to your conscience, the inner light that illuminates the truth. Every person knows what the truth is. We choose not to see it. And therefore, we don't do the right thing. The biggest leadership challenge today, and this is what I start every meeting when I'm advising a board of directors, is inability to see the reality and understand the reality.
The last thing the fish notices is the water that it swims in. So that's your point about seeing
Perfect. You
there.
summed it up.
Yeah.
So, you see, we have today if new forces at work. It starts with consumers. They are not stupid. Look at how, I mean, they have the ability to stop a company in its tracks within a fortnight. And social media, we may say we mask the truths. People are more intelligent than we give them credit for. Revolutions are never taking place because of what the thoughts at the top are. Revolutions are brought about by common people. It won't be an armed revolution this time. It will be a revolution from knowledge to wisdom.
Which brings me to reflection. You talk about the importance of reflection and the thinking doing continuum. And, there are people in the world that haven't claimed they haven't got time to think. Of course, we live in a consumer world, in your country as well as mine, where I call it a McDonald's culture. I want everything now. And therefore, that precious time of being able to reflect is very valuable if we are to see things as they are. Can you say something about the importance of reflection in this process?
Uh, every person at any time is either doing something or reflecting on something. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, those who are wise, when they do something, they try to be just and fair, because they know of no other path. And when they are reflecting, they just be yourself. Don't look at others from the perspective of your past beliefs and prejudices, which are just no longer relevant anymore in the world today. If you Today we see them, but we don't look at them. We we understand from what we think they should feel, not what they are actually feeling. So if you just be yourself, reflection is the easiest thing in the world if you don't let yourself be influenced by your past beliefs and prejudices.
Yes. Okay. So to come towards an end, um, I went the other week to a sustainable environmental conference organized by my local council, I have to say, which surprised me. And during that session, which was fantastic, there were presentations given by all kinds of people who are doing sustainable capitalism. One I'd pick out was a company called Oscar Acoustics, who are making it possible to hear people in cafes, workplaces, and other places by providing responsibly sourced sprays that are made from waste paper. to actually acoustically insulate so that you don't have to raise your voice. Because there is a lot of research that shows that's what happens in social situations. So that was a great inspiration to me as a case study of someone who's blending profit and purpose. This is not, wide-eyed hippies. These are responsible capitalists. So in your work, working with sort of people in boardrooms and what have you, can you point to any companies that are starting to get this in their heads and think this is the way to go?
Uh, well, I think we have come across several companies, and I've given examples of big companies like uh, Tata Group, and we have spoken about companies like uh, in each companies from each part of the world, like Yuan Chouinard on. I mean, he has donated 100% of the shareholding of his company to planet Earth. This is something because that person could have done anything. But for him, this is the only decision needed to be taken. The we have, I mean, small companies important in this field than the few dozen big companies I can talk about.
Hmm.
So people, when I talk of the big companies, they say, "Oh, that happens," but majority are not doing it. No, most of the world is very, very concerned about climate change, about being fair to employees, about not doing wrong advertising. I have a code of worthy capitalists, 10 points in it. And I see everybody will have to start working to it openly if they want everyone to succeed. But what is the problem in this? Why doesn't it happen? Now, uh, I have found that there individual talent and wisdom is not in short supply,
Hmm.
but collective talent and wisdom is in short supply.
Yes.
In a boardroom discussion, when I speak to individuals, they agree with me. But when the formal boardroom meeting is taking place, the one who is either the chairman or the most loudmouthed says something, and the tendency is because people think they don't want to be turned away from the board. For them, being a board member is far more important than being right about doing the right things. So there is often, for example, uh, uh, I've seen that unless every member of the board is on the same wavelength, companies don't change.
Hmm.
One man's convictions do not carry much weight. The entire board has to be involved in it. And I think there is the writing is clear on the wall that those who are changing are perhaps making a short-term drop in profits, but they are increasing their lifespan much longer than if they were not to do it.
Which brings us to my final comment on you mentioned beauty a few times here, and we need more beautiful thinking in business management and politics rather than perhaps ignorance as a sort of contrasting point. And we need that very much from what you just said in teamwork and not in groupthink. Have you any observations about how we can make the world a bit more beautiful for everyone?
Uh, well, I talk about many things, but they basically evolve around four key principles
Mhm.
to meet the objective which you have so brilliantly outlined. One, a leader must understand that no one knows all the answers today. He needs to find out from a very competent group of people and do so without pride and arrogance. Second, past experience and knowledge are no longer relevant to cope with the future. It's important that we should keep learning as if one will live forever and live each day as if this is the last day of my life. And third, the quality of leadership is never static. Every day, either it improves or it deteriorates. The tragedy is the leader doesn't get to know about it. And he has to have people who are not yes men around or yes ma'am around. He has to ask them, what do you think? Is this in our collective good or not? And that's possible only if a leader has a personal North Star, a set of non-negotiable convictions, and embark on a relentless quest on how I can lead better and serve better the people I lead.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, capitalism and peopleism, how can we get hold of it? How can we get hold of you if boards want to get involved with you? How do we do that?
Well, I normally do have interview requests almost every week, and I try and make myself available because I believe, and I thank you for sharing this belief in your question, that we need to spread this message to influencers, global influencers, policymakers, and through them to a larger group of masses so that they start discovering that they are not alone in what we are saying. I haven't said anything new. I may have given a rationale. I may have used a new vocabulary, and I may have put the dots together to make a cogent argument. But we need people's support, vocal support to do it. And the book, the soft version, is available all over the world. And the hardcover copy is available in Asia and Europe. And I think soon it'll be in USA in a couple of weeks, I hope.
Just in time, I feel. Ravi Chaudhry, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, as always, as every time. Thank you.
Till the next time.
All the best.